Braka, everybody. Welcome, YouTube alone. Fung-Eye Suprise. Parasitical-Fungaloid'S. Coming in many forms that we wouldn't believe. As normal, let's do some catching up and get some understanding. Make sure we're not just saying anything,
And swinging. After struggling for many years, she was able to finally break free from these bonds through her faith and love of Jesus. Before we begin, for those who are unfamiliar with this channel, our mission is to showcase authentic Christian testimonies from various corners of the globe and swinging. After struggling for many years, she was able to finally break free from these bonds through her faith and love of Jesus. Before we begin, for those who are unfamiliar with this channel, our mission is to showcase authentic Christian testimonies from various corners of the globe, aiming to amplify the message of God's kingdom. We present testimonies about Jesus, the afterlife, heaven and hell, and other Bible-related topics in story form 2 or 3 times a week. Now let's dive into today's story. I will start by revisiting my childhood. I was born into a Christian family, where we believed in the Bible and being born again. From my earliest memories, I had a genuine love for Jesus, not just repeating what my parents taught me. Even as a young child, I had a strong desire to share about the Lord with others. I remained active in Sunday school and youth groups. Unfortunately, I was exposed to sexual content at a young age, mainly through television and overhearing conversations. It sparked a curiosity in me at a very young age, leading me down a different path. As I grew older and hormones kicked in, my curiosity intensified. I started watching porn when I was young, unbeknownst to my parents. This diverted me from church and seeking the Lord, igniting a rebellious streak within me. It is crucial to protect children from such influences, as I engaged in these activities secretly, fueling my desires. Sneaking out of the house at just 13 years old, I would meet boys in the woods. I adopted a whole new persona, resembling that of a thug. Immersed in rap music and Eminem, my parents dismissed it as a passing phase. Little did they know, it fueled my rebellious nature and fueled my disdain for the church. At one point, even attempted to escape their control. Although they apprehended me the following day, they ultimately decided to send me away, unsure of how to handle my behavior. Thus, I was sent from New York to Texas, to a Christian disciplinary rehabilitation camp. This experience shattered me, forcing me to recognize the value of what I had back home. Moreover, it placed me in a position where I had to confront emotions I had never before confronted. I struggled to cope with my emotions, observing some girls resorting to self-harm. Thinking it might provide relief, I started cutting myself. It became a habit, a source of comfort. The more I did it, the more I craved it. Whenever anxiety or panic struck, I would discreetly cut myself with a razor in the bathroom. The cuts grew deeper over time. I vividly recall a moment when I was cutting rapidly, feeling a sinister aura enveloping me, even though there were no audible sounds. I observed nothing. It felt as though there was a presence alongside me, which was quite frightening. Consequently, I remained in that location for approximately a year. During that period, I also began to embrace my bisexuality. Upon returning home, I experienced deep depression. I adopted an emo persona, isolating myself socially and feeling emotionally closed off. I felt completely numb inside. It became apparent that I needed to cease self-harming because others were noticing and questioning it. Thus, I stopped self-harming and turned to smoking marijuana instead. I substituted one habit for another, constantly seeking to be under the influence from morning until my lunch break. After coming home from school, I started smoking cigarettes and actively sought ways to keep myself emotionally detached and sedated. This pattern persisted throughout my high school years. I idolized music, particularly Kurt Cobain and the grunge genre, and was heading down that path. At the age of 19, a friend visited me and casually mentioned that Jesus wasn't real. Strangely, his words struck a chord within me, causing me to feel upset, despite not living a Christian lifestyle or behaving as a follower of Christ. As a result, I made a decision to attend church and give it a chance. One Sunday, I went to church, and the pastor delivered a sermon about how one can become blinded by worldly possessions and desires. They will serve as distractions, hindering you from experiencing the genuine joy that God has in store for you. Upon returning home, these words echoed in my mind persistently. I couldn't shake them off. I was on the verge of smoking weed and listening to music as usual when suddenly, it felt as though a veil had been lifted. This revelation occurred in October of 2007. As I glanced around my room, adorned with posters of Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix, I realized I was idolizing these figures. They had become my idols. Looking at the weed, I acknowledged that I was idolizing it as well. None of these things were bringing me any fulfillment. In that moment, I called out to Jesus, expressing my desire for him to enter my life. I no longer wanted to live the way I had been living. It felt as though his spirit descended upon me at that very moment. The experience was incredibly tangible and intense. I was in tears, overwhelmed, and all the weight of depression lifted off me. The darkness stemming from self-harm, confusion, numbness, and loneliness dissipated when I cried out to Jesus. It was a remarkable transformation. Without any external prompting, I gathered all my posters, t-shirts, and CDs into a black garbage bag. I disposed of all my weed, bong, and related paraphernalia. On that day, I made the life-changing decision to quit smoking cigarettes cold turkey. It was truly a miraculous moment for me. Filled with excitement, I rushed up the stairs to share the news with my parents, exclaiming that I was saved. The joy and certainty I felt were overwhelming. Determined to spread the word, I composed a letter and sent it to all my friends, informing them that I had found Jesus and would no longer be indulging in smoking pot. I emphasized that true satisfaction could only be found through a relationship with Jesus. I was straightforward and honest with my friends about my transformation. Shortly after, I had the opportunity to share my testimony at church. It was a significant moment for me, as the difference in my life before and after finding Jesus was like night and day. Afterward, a man approached me and revealed that he had experienced a similar transformation a year ago. We decided to join forces and evangelize together, spreading the gospel. This was an incredible opportunity, and we embarked on this journey, eventually dating and getting married within 8 months. Our marriage began on a strong foundation rooted in God. We had a ministry alongside his father and family, traveling to different churches and sharing a powerful message inspired by Charles Spurgeon's teachings. We were united as a family, dedicated to doing the Lord's work. However, as time went on, we gradually stopped attending church, neglected praying together, and failed to nurture our spiritual lives. We primarily focused on indulging our desires and neglecting our spiritual well-being. Unbeknownst to me, I began consuming more alcohol. Gradually, we allowed worldly matters to take control of our lives without even realizing it. It is intriguing because when I first found salvation, I never imagined that my passion would diminish. However, this emphasizes the significance of remaining steadfast in our faith, staying connected to Jesus. Unfortunately, I failed to do so. One day, my partner approached me and expressed doubts about the authenticity of the Bible. Regrettably, I didn't conduct my own research. I simply accepted their perspective. Simultaneously, my fleshly desires were being gratified far more than my spiritual needs, leading me to entertain the idea that perhaps I didn't have to be accountable to anyone. Maybe I could live without any restrictions, without the existence of a higher power. Perhaps we are all divine beings. My thoughts began to wander, and my partner, without placing blame on them, guided me down this path alongside them. I made the decision to go along with it. I admitted, perhaps you're right. Maybe all of this is just a figment of our imagination. However, there was one aspect that I couldn't ignore: my testimony. The day I experienced a spiritual rebirth was etched in my memory, and it was incredibly difficult for me to dismiss its power. So, I chose to dismiss it as a mere creation of my own mind. As a result, We removed God from our marriage, and we deluded ourselves into thinking we were free to do as we pleased. Suddenly, we found ourselves wanting to experiment with Molly and explore swinging with other couples, things we would have never considered with God at the center of our relationship. Unfortunately, what we thought would be fun ultimately led to our divorce. Our curiosity and experimentation opened the door to other partners, and we both fell into a life of sin. My drinking escalated significantly, and this marked the beginning of my battle with alcoholism. Without God's presence, I felt empty once again, just like I did as a teenager. But this time, I turned to alcohol to fill the void. The consequences of my drinking were profound. It changed me, fueled my carnal desires, and plunged me into depression, taking a toll on my mental well-being. Around 2015, when I was 27 years old, I found myself feeling empty and depressed, trapped in an unhappy situation. I gave an ultimatum to my partner: either we divorce or I take my own life. He suggested counseling, but I refused. Eventually, we parted ways, and I sought solace living with my family. It was a relief to be on my own, free to make my own choices. While leaving a marriage that did not align with my beliefs was positive, I soon found myself lost without direction. Living with my family, I began to explore different lifestyles, dating women and couples, and engaging in activities with no boundaries. Despite initially feeling like I was living an exciting life, I realized that each experience left me feeling more empty than before. I couldn't find happiness in this cycle, leading me to consider moving to another state as a fresh start. Initially, relocating to North Carolina, a town known for its breweries, seemed like the solution to finding contentment and happiness. The city is renowned for its vibrant live music scene. During that period, my alcoholism reached its peak as I was unemployed and solely relying on credit cards for my expenses. Being away from my family meant that I had no one to hold me accountable for my actions, which was a new experience for me. In an attempt to reinvent myself, I decided to cut off all my hair and adopt a rocker persona, immersing myself in the world of live music. On social media, my life seemed like a never-ending party, but deep down, I felt an overwhelming sense of despair and restlessness whenever I was alone with my thoughts. It was during this time that I started associating with individuals who encouraged me to explore unconventional avenues, such as making videos, or even considering a career as a stripper or dancer in order to alleviate my mounting debt. However, the turning point came when someone I trusted spent the night, and I woke up to find many of my belongings missing. Taking it as a sign, I made the decision to leave that place and return home to New York. There, I moved in with a new boyfriend and reached a point of exhaustion with the partying and drinking lifestyle, leading me to declare that I no longer wanted to consume alcohol. I no longer have the desire to go outside. I am finished. All I want is to be alone and do nothing. That's the agreement we made. Even though I had no interest in Christianity, I reached a point where I needed something spiritual. I needed something that the material world couldn't provide. That's when one of my friends started selling crystals on Etsy. Up until then, I had no knowledge or belief in anything related to the New Age or metaphysical. However, I decided to support my friend by purchasing one of her crystals. It seemed like a kind gesture. I looked up the meaning of the rose quartz crystal I bought, and it symbolized self-love. I thought to myself, I could use some self-love. Every time I looked at the crystal, I associated it with self-love. I found it really comforting, so I decided to buy more crystals. I started researching them and discovered that people believe these crystals possess certain powers. I continued my research on YouTube, learning more about crystals because I found it intriguing. Suddenly, I stumbled upon tarot readers who were interpreting tarot cards. They would ask you to pick a pile, and then they would predict what would happen in the next 5 years. I was captivated by what they were saying because it resonated with me deeply. That's when I made the decision to buy some tarot cards. I wanted to communicate with another spirit to seek guidance and direction for my life. Initially, I fully immersed myself in the realm of New Age practices, such as astrology and birth charts. It was during this time that I experienced a profound realization, almost like an epiphany. I had finally discovered what I had been searching for all along. This led me to make the decision to pursue a career as a yoga teacher. I began to see myself as a light worker and a healer. Moreover, I started to believe that I possessed a divine essence, and that my purpose is to assist others in recognizing their inner divinity. Admittedly, at times it felt as though I was simply creating my own narrative, embracing whatever ideas appealed to me. I was able to defend my beliefs by asserting that they were my personal truth. However, I have since come to understand that truth is not subjective. In order for something to be considered true, there can only be one truth. Thus, my previous convictions regarding my own divinity and other aspects were merely my opinions. In due course, I pursued my aspiration of becoming a yoga teacher. Interestingly, my yoga instructor, who happened to be a woman, embodied many of the qualities I admired and desired for myself. She was a confident business owner, and I held great admiration for her. Over time, my admiration for her grew into love, and I made the decision to express my feelings. Consequently, both she and I ended our respective relationships with our boyfriends, and began a romantic relationship together. I subsequently moved in with her, and now I believe that being with a woman was the missing piece of the puzzle in my life. It seems that my previous unhappiness stemmed from the misconception that I was meant to be with men. Then we started living together, and even contemplating marriage. We were participating in these yoga retreats and starting businesses. It is important to note that I had not consumed any alcohol for 2 years. I suggested to her that maybe I could have a drink, as long as I had self-control and self-discipline. Surprisingly, she agreed and even encouraged it. So I had a glass of wine with her. However, the following week, my drinking escalated, and I fell back into the cycle of alcoholism. I made sure to hide it from her by getting rid of all the bottles before she arrived home. As a result, I started feeling empty and depressed once again. One evening, she expressed her desire to invite a psychic over, who happened to be one of her friends. She mentioned that the psychic would provide us with a free reading, which she believed would be fun. I had never encountered a psychic before, so I was intrigued. When the psychic arrived, she requested to speak with us individually. I found myself alone in a room with her, where she began performing a ritual to summon a spirit. During this process, I experienced an intense tightness in my chest and heart, causing tears to stream down my face. I couldn't help but ask her what was happening to me, as it felt like a physical attack. Surprisingly, she suggested that perhaps someone in my family had suffered a heart attack. I quickly dismissed this notion, as no one in my family had experienced such an event. I found it peculiar that the moment she performed the ritual, I felt as though something had targeted me. Despite the lack of resonance in her psychic talk, she did bring something into my life that day. During that same night, as I slumbered, I experienced an incredibly lifelike dream where I was plagued by a demonic presence and felt compelled to harm the girl lying beside me. Startled awake, both she and I erupted into screams, sensing an eerie presence lingering in the room. It was around 3 or 4 a.m., and consumed by fear, we hastily vacated the premises, only returning once daylight had graced the sky. I can confidently say that was the most terrified I have ever been in my entire life. When darkness enveloped you, and you possess a heightened sensitivity to such phenomena, you can truly feel its presence. Shortly thereafter, my dissatisfaction extended beyond my relationship with her. I found myself discontent with life as a whole, prompting me to make a decision. I realized that this path was not fulfilling for me, and I needed to pursue something different. Fast forward to 2022, I secured my first ever apartment. Finally, I had a full-time job, paying bills, and on the side, I indulged in my passion for music as a live musician, earning some extra income. It seemed like I had finally established a solid foundation, and I felt a sense of pride in my accomplishments. However, despite these external achievements, I still felt a void within. Thus, I persisted with my New Age practices, engaging in crystal meditation, and attempting to communicate with spirit guides, even though I was uncertain of their true identities. Occasionally, I would catch a fleeting glimpse of tranquility, only for it to dissipate soon after. There was nothing that would endure, so I had to continue pursuing and exploring. I sought love, and I began using dating apps. I would engage in a romantic relationship with someone and become very enamored with them, only for it to fizzle out. We would part ways, and I would seek out another. This pattern became like an addiction for me. It left me emotionally depleted and hollow. Consequently, I resorted to drinking again, unable to believe I had regressed to this point. I told myself, I thought I had everything under control. I live independently. I have a job. I perform live music. So, what is lacking in my life? I thought, maybe I should consider therapy. I visited a therapist recommended by my grandmother. At the conclusion of the session, the therapist inquired if I attended church. This question caught me off guard because I wondered why it was relevant. I simply replied, no, I don't. However, as I left the therapy session, that straightforward question lingered in my mind. It replayed incessantly, bothering and annoying me, despite its simplicity. I thought to myself, perhaps I should give church a try. Maybe this is a sign from the universe that I need to explore church. I never once considered the possibility of reconnecting with Christianity. However, I decided to attend a local church and was surprised to hear the preacher discussing the Bible's stance on psychics, astrology, and New Age practices. These were the very things I had placed my faith in, hoping they would bring me healing and peace. Yet, I realized that they had failed to fulfill their promises. As I left the church, I pondered whether God was trying to communicate with me, revealing that he was the answer I had been searching for. It suddenly became clear to me that Jesus was what I had been missing all along. However, due to my stubbornness, I initially resisted this realization because I wanted to follow my own path. Unfortunately, my way of doing things proved to be ineffective. I tried everything, but nothing brought me true satisfaction. It was in September of 2022 when I took a look around my apartment and noticed all the objects I had idolized, the moons, crystals, and other occultic items. I knew deep down that I had to remove these things from my life. I couldn't continue worshiping them. However, I hesitated to part with my crystals because I had invested a significant amount of money in them. So, I decided to keep them as mere decorations, vowing not to use them for meditation or any spiritual practices. Shortly after making this conscious decision, I had a vivid dream that left a lasting impact. In this dream, I experienced a unique state where I was both awake and asleep. The vivid imagery consisted of red eyes staring at me against a dark backdrop. Suddenly, I woke up to a voice emanating from within me, but it wasn't my own. It was a deep growl in a language foreign to me. This occurrence frightened me, yet it also revealed a profound truth. I realized that there was a spiritual battle for my soul, involving demonic forces intertwined with the New Age practices I had been engaging in. Now that I had turned to Jesus, it seemed that I had disturbed these entities. This revelation made it clear to me that there was a spiritual warfare taking place. Consequently, I decided to part ways with all my crystals the following day. I made a firm decision to fully commit myself, refusing to be lukewarm or have one foot in and one foot out. It was an all or nothing choice. I am grateful for that dream, as it was undeniably real and not a mere figment of my imagination. The voice that emerged from within me solidified my conviction to become actively involved in a church community. I understood the importance of anchoring myself in one place and ceasing my aimless church hopping. I recognized that my walk with Jesus would be strengthened by joining forces with other believers. As the saying goes, iron sharpens iron. Consequently, I decided to join a recovery group to address my ongoing struggle with alcohol. It took time for me to overcome that struggle. I had to develop.
We watch everything on liquid crystal display, even outside. Read Job 37:18. You in a liquid display called hydrogen, compressed hydrogen. But to you, it looked like a clear glass vault or a hole. Everything is liquid crystal display is why you have water made up mainly in your body. Even your blood is plasmic. which makes that crystallization from the pineal gland. Good job. Correct, by your words. So, being that water is air, solid, and liquid, you would formally say gas, which is equal to a spirit, soul, which is liquid, and soul ID. You might say solid, but your soul is what's covered by the ID, identification of the entity called your physical body. So, hold on 1 second. Hello? Hello? Yes, sis. Hey. You here? All right. All right, everybody. So as you get an understanding that there are things out here that comes in micro, viruses, bacteria, but these are the entities or the spirits or metaphysical anatomy for the wages of sin. Thoughts you're not supposed to do that you carry out in your body takes the penalty for, yet your soul doesn't have a consequence. Your soul don't get sick. Your soul isn't tired. Your soul don't need sleep. That's why God got to judge it. It's two judgment. Reap what you sow physically. And when you resurrect and rise again to the next dimension, that's where the real judge is at. Your books in the Bible said the second death had no power over those in the first resurrection. Revelation chapter 20, 1 through 9. I'm BC the Tizite, BC the I-Vet Group. Until next time, y'all stay true. Thanks for coming out. HSE-TV Entertainment, Holy Spirit Enlightenment Television Network, where we build, takes iron to sharpen iron. Braka.